Welcome gamers. Wearing green tie-dye because today we're heading out into the wilds. For a long time, I wasn't satisfied with my random wilderness encounters during a D&D style hex crawl. Having a list of critters and monsters on a wandering encounter table, that's really just the first step. To make an engaging scene, you need more. I unlocked the secret to making great wilderness encounters, and now I run hex crawls with confidence. By the end of this video, you'll have 4 tools to elevate how you generate random wilderness encounters during a hex crawl. Now, these principles come from improv theater, so it's not referee advice I've seen anywhere else. The light bulb moment came when preparing to run 5e's Tomb of Annihilation. Tomb of Annihilation features a continent-wide jungle hex crawl, and I wanted it to be awesome. I connected to a lesson from improv theater. My wife's an improv actor, and before kids, she would drag me to shows, to workshops. I'd work lights at some of these theaters. So I got indoctrinated into improv theater. So now, imagine that we're in the audience at a show. We're in the darkness. The lights are on the stage. 2 players come out, 2 actors. They get a suggestion from the audience and they start a scene. One player is doing things with their hands and they're going like this. And after we watch for a few minutes, we realize they're doing the dishes. So this must be a kitchen. And the other players observing for a few seconds, then they saunter onto the stage. They open something up. It looks like the refrigerator. They take out a bottle and they start drinking right out of the bottle. And now the first actor goes, "You always do that. You never buy your own milk. You always use my stuff and you drink my milk right out of the bottle. And oh, by the way, I'm doing the dishes, your dishes from last night, because I have friends coming over and I don't want our apartment to look like a pigsty." And so now we know exactly what's going on. This is a kitchen in an apartment. The 2 players, the 2 actors are roommates. One of them is conscientious. The other person doesn't respect boundaries. So there's some conflict in the relationship. And they're set up to be able to start a scene. And the insight for our wilderness encounters, our random wilderness encounters, is that we need 4 elements to be able to build great scenes. First, we need a strong sense of place. Second, we need to know, second and third, we need to know what each party is doing. What are the players doing when the scene starts, and what are the monsters doing? And then fourth, what's the relationship between them? So the rest of this video, we're going to go through each of those elements and how to arm you with tools to create great random wilderness scenes. I mentioned how the light bulb went off for me when preparing Tomb of Annihilation. And like I said, it's this continent-wide hex crawl through the jungles of Chult. There's rivers that go everywhere. There's jungles to explore. There's mountains. When we actually played it, my players spent months canoeing through the rivers of Chult, exploring every corner of it, because they're trying to find a lost forbidden city, like deep in the jungles of Chult somewhere. And so the first challenge is, how do we create a really evocative sense of place? And this is just a challenge with hex crawls in general. We're looking at these 6-mile hexes, and the procedures are very high level, like break camp and start travel, and we're measuring travel in 6 miles. And so we're way up here when we're adjudicating the hex crawl at the 10,000 foot view. But when a wandering encounter happens and you see what the encounter is, you have to very quickly get from here down to about a football size field area where the encounter is actually going to happen. And for Chult, I remember looking at tons of pictures of the Amazon River, the Congo River, just getting inspiration and ideas for all different river scenes. And then I created a table with very brief vignettes about what the river could be like at any given section. Because if the players start at 8 a.m. in the morning and the first wilderness encounter is 1 p.m. in the afternoon, who knows what the river's like when the encounter actually happens. Typically, we get a high-level overview of the wilderness in general, and it falls on the referee to improvise what the scene actually is when the encounter happens. So build a table of brief descriptions that are interesting locations for when an encounter is going to happen. So for Chult, there were sections of the river that had huge boulders that they would have to canoe around, and maybe there's caimans or crocodiles sunning themselves on the rocks. There would be large flat sections that are very wide open and sunny, areas where the river narrows and it feels claustrophobic with jungle trees hanging over and vines hanging down, and it's shady and kind of swampy and sweaty, humid. There would be areas where there's rapids, where maybe it levels out, they see a pond or a deep lake up ahead, but oh no, there's rocks because that's the beginning of rapids or maybe a waterfall. I think I probably created about 30 different little vignettes about what the river was like at any given time. And then when an encounter happened, I could just roll against the table. Right now, I've converted 5e's Curse of Strahd to Shadow Dark. And in Barovia, in Curse of Strahd, there's this woods, the Svalich woods, that cover most of the valley. And I picture them like the Black Forest in Germany. So I've done the same thing. I've created a table of 30 entries related to the Svalich woods. So when an encounter happens, it's not you're in the woods, it's you're on the trail. Several large trees have fallen over, blocking the way. You'd have to climb over them. There's brambles on either side. Something that's a lot more interesting that creates an instantly memorable scene. The second key insight for me is to establish what's the party doing at the time that the encounter happens. Now, if you roll a wandering encounter and say, all right, it's 1 p.m., what are you guys doing? They're going to say, we're doing the same thing we were doing at 8:01 this morning when we set out and broke camp. We are canoeing down the river in perfect formation and military precision like Army Rangers. Real people are not like that. If you've been on hikes, people inchworm. There are stragglers, so the group stretches out and then you have to wait for people to catch up. Someone's going to drop something. People have to stop and tie their shoe. There's bathroom breaks. There's rest breaks. Someone has to stop and rummage in their backpack. You're mapping. We never talk about, oh, I need to stop and check the direction we're going. D&D characters don't have compasses, but we're assuming that they're navigating with the sun and they're mapping along the way, so there should be map breaks throughout the day. I ended up creating a large table of all different things the party could be doing, in addition to sometimes they really are just in perfect formation doing what they said they are doing, but a lot of times they're not. All right, here's one trick though, or I would say here's a piece of important referee advice to keep in mind. You don't want to take agency away from the individual characters. So it's never a good idea to say, this is what your character is doing. You always have to leave that to the player. But I do think it's okay to say, but this is what the party's doing, and now you tell me what your character is doing. I'll give you an example. The players are canoeing in Chult. Like I said, they've come to this large, quiet pond-like area, but they can hear the sound of rapids, and they realize that at the end of the pond, there's a waterfall. So they've paddled off to the side. The what are the players doing right now says that they're taking a break. So I would say, okay, you guys are going to have to portage your canoes or come up with a plan because you can't go over the waterfall in your canoes. But right now you're taking a break. So Bob, what are you doing? Joe, what are you doing, etc. And you go around the group and let the players then narrate during a break what their characters do. The bard is going to say, well, I've got my instrument out because I'm working on a song, so I always tune my instrument during a break. The warlocks probably, I go off into the woods and commune with the Dark Lord. There's always going to be that one fighter, Ragnar doesn't rest. He just waits and he sharpens his sword. Okay, Ragnar. But the idea is that Now you've created a scene, you know what the location looks like, and you know what the players are doing. The third element is, what's the monster doing? Now this is an area where I feel like a lot of old school games especially have armed us with random tables already to help identify what the monsters are doing. So here's an example of a table from Shadow Dark that's simple. I recently picked up a game called Knave. It's full of interesting tables. Knave has a much more detailed table in it of what the monsters could be doing. So this luckily is one that you don't have to go create for yourself. And then the fourth element is, what's the relationship between the players and the monsters? Now, they haven't met each other yet. So when I'm talking about relationship, it involves things like, what's the distance? How far away is the encounter when it starts? Is it close, near, or far? We're in hexes, so there's six sides to the hex. We can roll a six-sided dice and identify which direction the monsters are coming from. The encounters aren't always in front of you. And of course, since we're using old school rules, just about every old school game has some kind of a reaction table. I'll put up the example from Shadow Dark. What I like to do with the reaction table is roll the dice, see what the number is. That becomes the initial mood or the temperament of the monster before the encounter happens. And then if it's an intelligent encounter, once the players get a chance to communicate, then I'll apply their charisma bonuses to potentially move the encounter one way or another. So let's put it all together in an example. Well, we've been talking about Chult. The players have been canoeing. They come to an area where there's going to be a waterfall. They can't canoe over the waterfall, so they paddle off to the side. There's a muddy beach there and a clearing along the edge of the jungle. And the players see a path through the jungle where maybe other adventurers or other explorers have portaged their canoes and carried them past the falls. So we've established what everyone's doing during the break. The encounter ends up being a pack of ogres. They're moving towards the players through the jungle. They're on the near side of the river. But I roll that the encounter is friendly. I don't know what friendly ogres would be like. Maybe we just ate a bunch of dwarves, so we don't necessarily see you as food. But the ogres could be, but give us your money if you want us to leave you alone. That probably passes for friendly for an ogre or a group of ogres. But the point is, now we've got all the elements in place for this to feel a little bit less random and at much more of an interesting scene. We know the place, we know what the players are doing, we know what the ogres are doing, and we've got at least an initial temperament for the ogres and a reaction roll. So I do this for all my wilderness encounters. Like I said, it's elevated my experience running hex crawls. I hope you found this useful. If you've enjoyed this video and this content, please like and subscribe and follow me for more. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.